This is The World This Week. With us this week, France 24 International Affairs editor Annette Young, Ron Linker of Dutch public broadcaster NOS, both radio and TV, a versatile man, Régis Le Sommier of Paris Match magazine, and photojournalist Amar Abed-Rabo. Welcome back to all of you. Before the break, we were discussing the Turkish Prime Minister and his trip of nations where Arab leaders have been ousted, going to Egypt, Tunisia, and Libya. And let me put the question first to you, Amr. When you hear Erdogan raising the rhetoric on Syria, but with very strong words for Israel, where is he going?
You know, it's been now like 3 years maybe since the Davos, there was an incident at Davos between him and, was it Olmert then? Or I don't know. Shimon Peres, yeah. And since then, he's the real hero of the Arab street, you know. I mean, everywhere you go, Turkey. For instance, in Syria, he's been opening, before the events, he's been opening the frontier. Syrians need no visa to go to Turkey, and suddenly many people who couldn't come to Europe anymore go to Turkey. It is the place everyone dreams about, everyone's talking about. It is so now he's just continuing on this on the same trend. You know, he's very popular in the street. So what is popular in the street is to be anti-Israel. He's going there also with the UN report.
Talk. For now, it's talk. For now, it's rhetoric.
I think it's rhetoric, yeah, mainly. I mean, what else is he offering?
Annette Young, I want to show you images that we saw back on Wednesday. Syrian tanks on the move near the Turkish border. And the question is, when you look at those images, is Ankara really raising its game when it comes to really what could be the acid test for Turkey, which is its relationship with neighboring Syria?
Well, it's made it very clear that it's lost patience with Damascus, and the fact of the matter is, while it's talking the talk and talking up the talk with the Arab world, it's also at the same time very cognizant of its relationship with NATO too. The fact of the matter is that there has already been discussion about Turkish troops moving in and creating some sort of buffer zone on the Syrian side of the border, and certainly if the violence continues increasing and there's a massive flood of refugees, well, you might start to see something like that. And Turkey wants to see itself, yes, it's talking the talk, but let's not forget it's also a rapidly growing economy. It's starting to become an economic force to be reckoned with at the eastern end of the Mediterranean. They know that, and that's certainly something that's assisting them as they start to boost their image within the region.
All right, one final point on this, because we still have a lot to go through. We were talking about Syria. 6 months on, the crackdown continues. 2,600 killed so far, says the UN. And yet we have scenes like those seen this Friday in Hama. There you can see spectacular images. Amar Abed-Rabo, 2,600 killed, and yet these are images from this Friday. Are you surprised?
I'm not surprised, because the same causes that we had in March, we still have them now. I mean, nothing really changed. When you look at it, the state or the regime is weaker and weaker. I mean, they say they're stronger and stronger, but when you look at many indicators, they are weaker than in March. They accept to let people speak freely in a way in Damascus. There is opponent meeting, I think, tomorrow that is scheduled. It's going to be interesting to see if it will be really authorized or not. And recently they've done a major operation of inviting media. I mean, a lot of media, even people who really hate them, they've been inviting and letting them in. It shows a kind of panic, you know, like we from every little the activist who was just killed last week, Ghayath Matar. Ghayath Matar is one of he preaches nonviolence. He's very into peaceful demonstration. Yet he was arrested, tortured, and killed. So it shows that they are weaker and weaker, and they are. What they say, like we want reforms, we want elections, etc., is not at all proved or shown in the streets. So of course the population, I mean, the same causes in March are still here. So I'm not surprised by these images.
Not surprised. let's move on and just say that for the past 9 months, the conflict between Israel and the Palestinians has taken a backstage to events in neighboring states. Now the tension's going crescendo, with the Palestinian president Friday insisting that he'll be calling that vote for statehood when the United Nations General Assembly convenes in New York next week. According to Israeli newspaper Haaretz, Prime Minister Netanyahu will agree, Annette, to an upgrade status, but it falls short of status. I know you've got your ticket booked for New York. What's going to happen?
Who knows? You know, they say a week is a long time in politics. Well, a week in the Middle East is an eternity. So we're a good week away from that day being next Friday, when we're expecting to see that vote, or whatever it is that the Palestinians are going to present at the UN General Assembly. At the moment, Mahmoud Abbas is insisting that they're going to push forward with the idea of calling for a vote on statehood. But I suspect between now and then there'll be frantic discussions involving the Americans, and that it will talk about a fallback compromise position, which will be effectively acceptable to all parties. And we got a wind of that. You know, this is what happens in the Middle East. You don't hear anything sort of on the record from politicians. You have to listen to the scuttlebutt, and the scuttlebutt is that Netanyahu is saying, okay, maybe I can live with an enhanced observer status, which is basically what the Vatican has at the moment, the state you have when you're not having a state. But the key thing about that, of course, is that it will still allow Palestinians to participate in UN treaties and conventions, most importantly, the International Criminal Court, where they can call on the ICC to pursue individuals with charges of crimes against humanity. And that's something the Israelis and certainly the Americans are not comfortable with. I have to say the big loser in all of this is none other than Barack Obama, that's for sure. I mean, he's found himself between a rock and a hard place on this one. I mean, the fact is, if they do go to the Security Council, he says the Americans will veto.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't, Ron Linker?
Yes, well, I think the Americans won't go for this. They will veto a Palestinian state. They've also announced it already. And I think Barack Obama, I don't think we can expect very much on this issue the coming year from Barack Obama. He's got his hands tied behind his back because of these elections. It's going to be a tight race in America next year, so he can't afford to become, that he has to campaign on the issue of being the president who created the Palestinian state in America. Already there have been elections for members of the House of Representatives that the Democrats lost because Republican candidates campaigned on the issue that Obama is not a friend of Israel anymore.
Amr, the United States, which has gone to such great pains to keep a low profile on Libya so that they don't appear to be imperialist after what happened in Iraq, and here they're going to come out, if we listen to Annette and Ron, looking like the bad guys next week.
It's I mean, it's a big disappointment, of course, for a lot of people who were expecting so much from Obama, but also it's a disappointment from United States, just United States, because when you look, when was Bush promised, who said there will be a Palestinian state within a year or something like that? 2005. That was 6 years ago. And in 6 years, nothing happened. So,
and Obama has also promised that there will be a Palestinian state by 2011.
But I think so. If everybody is promising a Palestinian state and everybody is saying we should have a solution with 2 states, and then when the Palestinians say, okay, let's go there, and then everybody's saying, no, it's a bad idea, it's ridiculous.
But I think for Bush it was just rhetoric, because other than declaring that there should be a Palestinian state, he did nothing. On the other hand, Obama tried to do something. I think he risked much more. I mean, what you said about the Democrat being pointed out as being unfriendly to Israel is a crucial thing, and that came from Obama's attitude. Mm-hmm. That came from the reception he had after his frisk with Netanyahu, and he tried to carry some weight on that, but it didn't work out, and we're on election time, and certainly not a time for an American politician to.
That's why you always see these initiatives at the end of the second term of the president. It's the end of Clinton's second term, the end of Bush's second term, and Obama actually did it in his first year, which brought a lot of risks, and we see the results.
Final point on this. I want to get your word on this, Annette. You were correspondent for 7 years in Jerusalem. We're talking about the United States being painted as the bad guy. We heard the Egyptian Prime Minister this week saying, well, the Camp David Accord, it's not really set in stone. it's Israel that's most in the hot seat.
Oh, it is indeed, and in that sense, and what they're doing is, by not playing ball as far as the others parties are concerned, is facing further diplomatic isolation. And it's interesting to see in reading the Israeli newspapers that is now starting being talked about quite openly in the Israeli mainstream media. It wasn't the case beforehand. With Netanyahu, I mean, all we're hearing is that, yes, he'll be going to the UN General Assembly, yes, he'll be speaking, but at the end of the day, he is also in a coalition government which involves, or includes rather, some hardline politicians, and they've made it clear that if the Palestinians go ahead with such unilateral declarations, they're going to have no other choice but to, in their opinion, annex those settlements in the West Bank. So, I mean, the fact of the matter is, yes, Israel is very much on the outer at the moment. It's lost Egypt, it looks like, in the sense of what we saw last week in Cairo, and now even the Prime Minister is saying that maybe the time has come to, have a look at the peace treaty. It's certainly lost Turkey, and I was talking off the record with a very senior Israeli politician last few months, and he says every time they go into the room with Barack Obama, there's not exactly a warm and welcoming atmosphere either. So despite Obama being in this difficult position, I think it's clear where his personal views lie as well.
All right. And you mentioned how a week's a long time in the Middle East. When this week began, when you're looking at news between France and Africa, we all thought the focus was going to be on the first ever state visit by Rwanda's president to France since the genocide. And it looked like it was set to dominate the headlines. But then came a visit the visit got overshadowed by the confessions of a close confidant to the French president, Nicolas Sarkozy. Robert Bourgi, also a confidant to several African heads of state. He claims that he helped shuttle briefcases full of bills, or in the case of Burkina Faso, djembes stuffed with cash, which he personally delivered for the close entourage of former President Jacques Chirac, including the then Chief of Staff, Dominique de Villepin. It's a bittersweet week, Régis Le Sommier, for de Villepin, former Prime Minister. He was cleared on appeal of trying to smear his bitter rival, Nicolas Sarkozy. But Robert Bourgi's confessions, what do you make of them?
Well, everybody wonders why now. I mean, why all of a sudden Robert Bourgi has decided to say, without any proof, by the way, but has decided to confess publicly. And
he says he himself brought the cash to...
Yeah. And
Villepin at one point says to him, what is this, small denominations?
Yeah. but and also there's some, very bizarre aspect to his testimony is, for instance, that he remained Mr. Afrique for... Mr. France Afrique, like the one who inherited from Foucault and from the Gaulian and Pompidou area. And all of a sudden, he stayed Mr. France Afrique under Sarkozy, but he said those practice stopped when I was under Sarkozy. So I wouldn't say go up to saying that he's been manipulated and stuff, but it's coming at a time where
is this something that just interests journalists, or is this something that the French public is interested in?
I think it's interesting for the French public because it tells a lot, if what he says is true, of the practice we've had and the real type of relation France had with its former colonies for years. And probably some of it is true. I don't know whether all of it is true. I don't know if Dominique de Villepin was, but he's clearly mentioned in that. And it comes at the time where, which is a very, also a very bizarre time because we have Jacques Chirac going on trial with a declining health, but still, being very much pointed out.
A corruption trial as well.
Yeah.
The son of Senegal's president, Karim Wade, is suing. So is Chirac.
Yes. So is Le Pen.
And so is Jean-Marie Le Pen, the head of the far right, accused of also receiving cash from African leaders, which surprised a lot of people. What surprised Robert Bourgi is the fact that Chirac is suing, since the former president's been excused from his own corruption trial because of memory losses that may be linked to Alzheimer's disease.
I'm happy that Mr. Chirac is suing me for defamation, and I'm happy for him and his family that he seems to have suddenly recovered his memory. In his embezzlement trial, he's suffering from memory loss, but for me, he's suddenly recovered all his mental capacities.
It's true that one can wonder about the timing of this. But while my client is indeed suffering memory problems, it seems to be worse for Mr. Bourguiba.
Ron Linker, there you saw the lawyer for Jacques Chirac. Are you wondering to yourself, what country have I moved to?
Yes, it's getting very complicated with all these court cases going on. But I have to say, with this Robert Bourgi case, what did the African leaders get back from all this money? There's so many questions to be asked about this, and he just dumped the whole story in Journal du Dimanche.
They were doing their bit for French democracy.
Yes. Well, then the elections are coming up, of course, and what role will this scandal play in these elections?
I mean, you were asking if is it a journalist story or is the public really? I mean, we were talking about Libya and all these things. You know, one day you give a lot of money to a neighbor, and then you expect him one day to do something in return. I mean, I'm not being naive. I'm not being cynical. It's just they don't just give money like this. I mean, we have in Libya affair, for instance, we were all wondering in 2007. About the exact role of Qatar when the nurses, you know, the Bulgarian nurses were released. There were a lot of money, maybe 300 or 400 million euros were paid by Qatar then to Libyans as a dédommagement, as a compensation for the nurses. And 3 years later or 4 years later, we see the Qataris now. Completely in Tripoli. I mean, the Al Jazeera is the hero of the people, etc. So, is this money? I mean, I think the public is really interested in these things. Like, what do we, as a citizen, what do we lose or what do we gain from these suitcases?
And it'll be a campaign issue in your view now, because we're 8 months from a presidential election in this country.
It seems now like a campaign issue. You know, I mean, the timing is also linked to. You know, to the book of Pierre Péan,
book
about jury.
On other scandals.
Another scandal. So probably it's but I'm not sure that it will be on the markets in France. I'm not sure people will really ask. They're more interested in their shares, house, jobs, etc.
All right. Well, it's certainly something that we'll be following with you. I want to thank you, Amar Abed Rabo. I want to thank Ron Linker, Annette Young, and Régis Le Sommier. Thank you for being with us here for The World This Week. Stay with us. Coming up next, it's time for business here on France 24.